Munasab Bain al-Ayat.
Not all of them. No, I didn't read them all.
Hmm.
It was kind of a lot of words. Like who was that by? Uh, that's the one Sahib al-Durr, huh?
I'm not sure. No, no, no.
Now, I started reading it, but I didn't. I had to. I was driving. I had to put it down. نبدأ إن شاء الله. بسم الله الحمد لله الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله وعلى آله وصحبه ومن والاه. اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما علمتنا وزدنا علما إلى علمنا ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله. Inshallah, we'll continue our discussion with our brother Abu Muawiyah Mustafa Nicholas, talking about the history of the call to Tawheed and the Salafi minhaj and the growth of it here in St. Louis, Missouri. And we've reached in the timeline, the time period of approximately 2005. And inshallah, today we'll try to cover from 2005 up until 2010, because there were a lot of activities that happened during that time. There were a lot of things that St. Louis started to have an actual Salafi community, the establishment of a masjid where its administration was upon Salafiyah, if perhaps maybe the first one in the city, and just some of the events, some of the people that visited St. Louis during that time, some of the trips that were taken by the people from St. Louis at that time, and then the connection with the Mashaykh of Kuwait and the traveling and how it began, going to Kuwait. So those are some of the things that happened in this timeline, this time period of 2005 to 2010. And like we mentioned last time, this is a time around 2005 I left St. Louis, and the brother Abu Muawiyah Hafidhullah Ta'ala put a great effort in, Jabbar, a very strong effort in establishing the call to Tawheed and the Sunnah in the city of St. Louis. And so we'll start with that time period. As I say, during this time, I'm in Philadelphia, just at this moment, still trying to get back into the university as much as possible. At that moment, I had originally thought of making a brother of mine, Abdul Latif, and we were planning to make Umrah. And so I could go talk to the university again. And my money didn't come in time. So we just decided to make Hijrah, or to leave. I shouldn't call it Hijrah, but to leave to Egypt. And, we had sold our books and got everything ready to go. I had gotten married at that time to Toba. This would have been 2006 now. And we were ready to go. Everybody was set up to go to Egypt. They actually all ended up going. I stayed back for a personal reason. And so from that period, 2006 till about 2010, I'm just in Philadelphia, existing, working, reading. We used to, hold some classes in Chester, PA, the brothers out there, brothers like Abu Sufyan, and things like that. Some classes at the house, visiting, having, relationships with the brothers in Germantown, Southwest, and things like that. But no strong activity from my part, other than just trying to increase my knowledge. And during this time, there was actually a gap in visitations from the Mashayikh. I think the only person who might have visited the East Coast during that time, except with the efforts of, brothers like you, Abu Muawiyah, who, some of the Mashayikh were visiting. I think the only one I can remember who actually came to the States during that period was Hassan al-Banna. If I'm not mistaken, I think Hassan al-Banna came to the States during that time. And maybe Khalid Raddadi as well, if I'm not mistaken, during this time period. But that's all the action.
Fahid as well.
Sheikh Fahad al-Fuhaid.
To Basira now.
Okay, yeah. See, I missed that altogether. But yeah, mashallah, hafidullah. So, I mean, that's that. For my timeline at that point in time, there's really not much action going on. Just the day-to-day, work routine. Had my first child during that time, and my second. Yeah, and maybe the third too. But so that's where I'm at. And so if you could, walk us through, like we mentioned, some of those historical events that took place in St. Louis through that time. We talked about, some of the taking control of the Dawah Center, but maybe some of the classes that, grew from there, some of the relationships that grew from there, the traveling that occurred during that time period, the establishing of the masjid, the visitation from some of the mashayikh like Sheikh Salam. And then I know there was a moment of, fitna that occurred towards the end of this period. So if you could walk us through all of that, that'd be highly appreciated. Barakallahu feekum.
Inshallah. Bismillah. Alhamdulillah wahdah wa salatu wa salam ala man la nabiyya ba'd. Amma ba'd. I just want to reiterate that, of course, I don't want anyone to think that I was the only one teaching classes. As I said yesterday, you also had Yusuf and the Bosnian brothers having some classes. I think mostly they focused on Quran. A lot of them memorized a great portion of Quran during that time, and they were able to mimic the Qur'an's voices very well, and they had a nice recitation. They focused on Tajweed a big amount. And they also had, I guess, other classes, but they were in Bosnian, so it wasn't something I was really aware of. I used to see Abdurrahman al-Somali, the taxi cab driver. I used to see him teaching classes in the back in West Pine with the Somalis. And he was active a little bit as well. But like I said, the brother Abid came, and they had basically an Arab crew that used to take over the Dawah Center in the evenings, and in the evenings on the weekend, and we used to take it over on other days. The Americans, or the English speaking people, we would take it over on other days, and we would have barbecues and invite people, and it was just active like this. As I said before, the main person I guess I was attached to was Abu Khalil. Before coming to St. Louis, I was the type of person that if I had a book and it said, written by this company, I would write that company or telephone them, and I'd call them and say, hey, send me a catalog, or do this or that, or do you have the number? I like that book. Do you have the number to the translator or the author, And so I was able to reach out, and I talked to Abu Khalil and Dawud Adib and Sheikh Muhammad Jibali, Allah Yahfadhu, and others that I was just able to reach out in bookstores and so on. And so I had this. Abu Khalil was probably one of the main translators at that time. He was working on the Kutub al-Sitta, whether he was translating or editing them. And so he was, I guess, the main person that we would go to ask questions about Dawah. And we had brought him to West Pine, as I said, and we had a book fair with him in West Pine before we opened up the masjid. And then, as I said, as things started getting more and more active, and we had people taking Shahada, and those people would go and ask Dar al-Islam certain questions, and they were problematic for them, and they just eventually said, we're going to kick you guys out. At that point, we began meeting at the Islamic Information Center, not just for a class or for a barbecue, but for meetings. And we decided that we were going to start looking for a place, and we were given the advice to, whatever money we said we could gather, let everyone go around and say what they can give monthly consistently. And we wrote that number down, and then whatever that number was, we were to take 75% of it, so that in case someone didn't give what they said they would give, then we wouldn't be over our budget or whatever. And so we began doing that. We looked for a place. I told the brothers, I don't want to give too many details, but I told the brothers, let everyone look for a place. Don't let just me or one other person look for a place, and then when it's next to our house or next to where we are, because that's where we're gonna be seeing them as we move around, and I'm gonna see next to my house the most. I don't want anyone later on coming and saying, why is it next to your house? Everyone has a chance to drive by wherever they live, and let's find a place. Anyway, end up being close to my house. I lived on McDonald at the time, so it was just 3 blocks away, and everyone liked the place. Once I checked it out, everyone liked the place, and we began renting it. We opened our first Jummah in August. I don't remember the date exactly. August of 2007. It was just a couple weeks before Ramadan. And we opened it up on Jummah. Salatul Jummah was the first salat that we prayed in there. We didn't even have an occupancy permit yet, but we were working on it. And we wanted to do a bunch of construction in there. It didn't have any bathrooms or anything like that. And so the first khutbah was given by Jalal Abu Rub. And we prayed on a concrete floor with that brown rolled out construction paper for when you put over carpet, so you don't mess up the carpet in someone's house. And that's what we used for rows. And we prayed, and there were about 35 of us. Now, before that, we were having classes in West Pine. They were getting pretty big. As I said, people were I might jump back and forth a little bit. Not everything's in my mind perfectly, I guess. There were conflicts with certain brothers. At this time, it's after 9/11. A lot of things are going on. We had one particular brother, Abu Abdullah al-Qurdi, and he had wanted to, he was complaining about the Muslim rulers not doing their job to help Afghanistan and Iraq and Syria and these countries. And he was going to go sell his TV and his car, and he was going to go buy an airplane ticket and go. And we had a talk with him, and then he started staying away from us, although he used to attend our classes. And then on the first Jummah, he came, and I was like, why is this guy here? Why is this guy here? He's going to cause trouble for us. But alhamdulillah, he came around, and then his family started coming around, and we developed a relationship because most of the brothers were probably Bosnian. Most of the brothers who we had the monthly agreement with and all of this that wanted to be Salafi, most of them were Bosnian. Once we opened the place, Abu Khalil, he said that I was the freest of the people, and so therefore I should be the imam. But
what does that mean? The freest of the people, like having.
I guess I had the most time,
okay.
most jobs, and I was the freest of the people, meaning time wise and somewhat knowledge wise, I guess, to study and to read and to dedicate to it. So I should be the imam, but that I should work with everybody as much as possible. And so at that time when we opened up, me and Brother Yusuf used to switch off giving the khutbah. 1 week it was me, 1 week it was him. And then what we used to do, we talked about it, and we didn't make it a condition, but we talked about it. Let's keep our khutbahs related to one another, not just have, sporadic messages being given. So basically he would take an ayah or a hadith from the khutbah I gave, and he would make that his topic, although it wasn't necessarily the exact same topic as mine. Then next week he might throw in a hadith which supported him, but it had a part, not directly related to what he did. And I would take it and make it the khutbah, so that there would be some type of theme and connection between us. And like I said, not just, I don't like this visiting khatib thing where we have a rotation every week and you don't know what the last khatib even spoke about. Maybe he spoke about brotherhood and you come speak about brotherhood again. Rather there should be some type of guidance and some type of direction that should be given to the people, because many people only come on Salatul Jummah. So this is the time when they need some direction, and they should have some type of consistent direction. So we had classes. We had Kitab Tawheed. We had Arabic classes. Yusuf taught Arabic. I taught Arabic to the best of my ability and his ability. We had 40 hadith. We had numerous classes. Slightly around that time, I don't really remember, before the masjid opened up, Sheikh Salam al-Tawil came to Texas, in July of 2007. So before the masjid was open, while we were working on opening the masjid.
So before
I went down.
Before we get into that stage, because this would have been his first visit to America, correct?
Yes.
I just one thing that you mentioned, just like constantly trying to be hadith on, deriving benefits from the conversation, and then some things that sparked my interest from what you mentioned. It's something that is a trait that maybe a lot of people don't know how effective and useful it is, and especially because the environment has changed some, they might think it's harder to do, when in reality it's a lot easier, and that is the affair of reaching out. I remember, being young and thinking like, to call the scholars directly, to infringe on their time, to try to reach out directly, get a phone number and call, an email, and or something like this, that was a heavy task to do, or something that you couldn't hope to possibly receive a response. And maybe some people feel like that. I know I felt like that at some times. But the reality is that it's not the case. Like,
no,
the people of knowledge, the people of benefit, they are not inaccessible. And that's something that I think a lot of people should really be aware of, is that they are at our service. They are dedicated to our service and our assistance. A lot of times people might hear statements like, I was at the house of so-and-so, or we were walking with Sheikh such and such. And they might think that it's something unique and special, when the reality of it is that these mashayikh, may Allah preserve them upon goodness, are often doing this with even strangers. And so one of the things that you mentioned about yourself that is a good learning point for people is to reach out. When you see a publisher or somebody who wrote a book, a lot of times they put their email in the book, right? Reach out, try to develop the contact, try to develop the relationship, and you'll be surprised about how much care and concern that you'll be shown directly. And that's one thing that I noticed about you and benefited from you, because like I said, my personality is different, but right, and being in your company, that was something that's always, like we talked about before, the relationship building and the desire to just reach out, be yourself, talk to the mashayikh, and get to them directly, and like opening that door that a lot of people might think is closed. And it's sometimes because of how we act here in the West, where sometimes the students or certain people can, kind of isolate themselves or be offish. The people of knowledge are not like that. So that's a good lesson to learn from something that, you were doing early on, which is just reaching out directly. If you can't understand what they're saying, you can still get somebody to translate. You can call these people directly when there's questions that you need to know, and they'll answer the phone. Just as good as anybody, being the gatherings of Sheikh Salam or something like that, how much the phone goes off, and just answering questions in the middle of just sitting and hanging out with the brothers and things like that. So I did want to touch on that point. You mentioned Abu Khalil, and you said the translation, but I don't want to overlook that. Like, Abu Khalil was the person who was heavily involved in translating Kutub al-Sitta in English.
Yeah, I mean, he translated all of Tirmidhi himself, and he did the editing for the other 4 books, because Bukhari was already done. He even completed some of the other books that weren't completed by the translator, like maybe I think Muslim might have been done by Yasir Qadhi, or Muslim or Abu Dawood, I don't remember, but maybe he didn't finish it, so Abu Khalil finished it or something like that. Anyway, it was his job to kind of bring a congruency or relationship between them, so that they didn't just seem like 6 separate books. Rather, they were all published by the same company with the same type of idea behind them. So, and he was a translator for QSS, and heavily involved in QSS for a long time, when it was in Kentucky, when it was in Detroit, when it was in Texas, so he was heavily involved, and he ended up being in Mobile, Alabama. Also, as we talked about, I had traveled early on to go see Abu Osama a few times, and sometime in 2004, he moved to the UK. Um, I bought a bus I got 2006, I want to say, because I got married in 2005 to Muawiyah. And in, I want to say 2006, sometime I bought a shuttle bus that goes from the airport to the hotels like this. And I turned it into a bookstore. It was called the Sunnah on Tour on the sides. My license plates were specialized plates saying no bidat. The back of the bus said, "Let the Sunnah go forth and don't stop." It had bookshelves, and I sold books and CDs and DVDs and oils and clothes and stuff like that. And I'd go to surrounding cities. I'd go to Kansas City when Sheikh Farid, rahimahullah, was there along with Abu Muhammad al-Maghribi. I would go there. I would go to Memphis. I knew some brothers there, still do. I would go. I took a trip to DC and sat outside the Mahad. It was still open during Ramadan for Taraweeh, and I sat outside there. And even though they had halalko and stuff there, man, they really appreciated the books being like on site, being able to look at them. And I did good. I drove up to New York and New Jersey and back down to DC and spent 2 weeks there, and then drove back through Ohio and made a trip back to St. Louis, visiting different masajid, visiting Brother Arif, rahimahullah, in Ohio. And anyway, I was going to Cincinnati and giving the khutbah uh, in the masjids, and I went to North Carolina and Greensboro and gave the khutbah in a masjid there. And we were active in giving da'wah, to the best of our ability. And most of these people I knew through Abu Khalil. I guess most of like Greensboro, and uh, I went to QSS one time, and Abu Osama was translating for the Mashayikh, and Abu Khalil had a couple lessons. And that's the first time I ever met Abu Khalil in person. First time I ever met Abu Osama in person. No, I guess the first time was with you. Yeah. Anyway, there was traveling. The Bazian brothers were going to Chicago, and Sheikh Muhammad Musa Nasser rahimahullah was going to Chicago. They went up there to visit him. I wasn't able to go for some reason, but a bunch of brothers from them went there. And brothers were traveling. Brothers were going places where, Jalal Abu Rub, Abu Khalil, Abu Osama, Farid Abdullah, Abu Muhammad al-Maghribi. Um, I don't even think Hassan Somali was in the States at that time. If he was, I don't know. I thought he was in the UK at that time, but maybe
I think he
maybe
was
he
here.
wasn't.
I think he was here.
Uh,
I don't think he was the imam at that point in Philadelphia, because I remember I didn't get to Germantown as much, and he might have been. And I know they had like a rotation.
right. I don't know. Like I said, I don't know. But these are the people I remember. And we had classes, and we were going to conferences, and we were traveling, trying to, meet other Muslims, other Salafis, and become better Muslims, better Salafis. And we had activity.
Yes, I remember like being in Philly. My ex Taymiya would call, and like she would talk about what like these are the classes that are happening at the Dawah Center, and and this is a point to I don't know how to articulate maybe the best, but like don't be a hindrance for people doing good, I think is one of the lessons to get from this. Because I remember she would call me, and like the mind state that some people develop in others is that if something is good, what I mean, it's not good until you say so. And
No.
that's something that we should, I mean, without a doubt, there's sticking to the Mashayikh and knowing who the Mashayikh are and knowing who you're getting your knowledge from and things like that. But she would call me and be like, they're going over Kitab al-Tawheed, they're going over Thalathatul Usul, they're going over these books. And, these are the only classes that are happening in St. Louis. Is it okay for me to go? And, this is my ex at the time, right? And it's just,
No.
I remember just thinking like, why wouldn't you go? You know what I mean? Like, there's never been anything consistent in St. Louis like that before. And, these are the books that you should be learning. So unless they're doing something crazy, why wouldn't you go? And so I think that's something that a lot of times as, you know, young Salafis, we can kind of play gatekeeper or develop that kind of mentality in people that if we're not the hand in it, if we're not involved in it, then it can't be any good. And that's something that, you know, we should really look at in ourselves as a group.
I mean,
I mean,
just along that point, because I don't know if it was me and you talking recently, or maybe it's something you said yesterday. I don't know, but like, you know, when you called Sheikh Salam Suhaimi and said these brothers are talking to Abu Osama, this and that, you know, just to be clear that maybe minus Taymiyyah, everyone that was around us, there was no problem with Abu Osama. There was no problem with Abu Khalil. There was no problem with any of these people. You know, maybe we had a problem with Abu Muslima because Abu Muslima was already off of it at that point, for sure. Abu Osama was going through his thing at that time, you know. But no one in our masjid, when we ended up opening up the masjid, no one in our masjid had a problem with Abu Osama audios being sold in the bookstore. Nobody, you know, not the people later on who we'll get to when they might complain about he talks to Abu Osama. You were with Abu Osama, Joker. If you didn't go see him, then it's because you weren't around or you couldn't go for whatever reason. But no one had a problem with any of what we were doing until there was a problem from some outside source, you know.
One other thing I benefited, and then we can, you know, talk about where you were getting to with the visit, the coming to America by Sheikh Salam, Hafidhullah Ta'ala. One thing that I benefited, I still benefit from you, and it's an important lesson to be learned as it relates to masjid building and community building, is planning. And I think that is one of the things that are often, you know, really overlooked in a community that's trying to build Salafiyah, is having the right plan of action when doing things. You know, it's not just getting a building. It's not just, I remember me and you talk about it often, you know, how they would work when establishing masajid. You know, if the Kuwait was paying for a masjid in Yemen or Africa or something, they would get an imam first and build around it. Like, if you could, I know you touched on it, but like, just like some of the planning, and you mentioned the advice that was given, like those two qualities when it comes to establishing a masjid and building a community are important steps to really think about who's going to be the imam, what are we going to do, how are we going to maintain it, not just simply opening a door and saying, okay, now we have what we need, but like really having a plan about how to grow and how to advance and how to actually properly, you know, promote Salafiyah from whatever location we might find ourselves in.
Yeah, like, you know, Sheikh Falah and them, rahimahullah, Sheikh Salam, when they would build masajid, they'd look for an imam first. If they didn't find an imam in that city, even though the city was in need of a masjid, if they couldn't find someone that was capable and was going to be there to be the imam, then they didn't build a masjid. And if they found somebody, then they did. So my advice is, when I talk to people, is you guys just need to find the best one amongst you with the most time amongst you and make him the imam. We don't all have to be scholars. We just have to stay in our lane. You know, balighu anni walau ayah, as the Prophet ﷺ said, narrate for me, even if it's just an ayah. This is dawah, and you just stay in your lane. You know, as I said, when I used to listen to the tapes, the first class of Usul al-Sunnah of Imam Ahmed, if you remember the young brother Dawood, the
Caucasian Dawood,
he's not so young. Married. The white guy, the white Dawood.
Yeah. Married Aisha, right?
Yeah, the Malaysian sister.
Yeah.
Anyway, he knew where I was going to get my information from, because me and him used to talk all the time. And I told him, I'm just going to go to Sheikh Abu Muhammad Abdul Rahul Shakir. He's got 10 tapes on it. It doesn't go into too much detail. It's nice. I'm gonna use him. And I remember him after the class said, "Man, I know you said you're going to use him as a like the source or whatever for your information, but man, I didn't know when he sighed you were gonna sigh, I didn't know he was gonna do that. I mean, just stay in your lane, man. Just stay in your lane, and with time you don't necessarily have to sigh when he sighs, and you can stray from what he says a little bit, and ad lib from your own experiences or something, but that takes time for you to develop speaking skills and knowledge and all of that. And so a person just needs to stay in their lane and be committed to a city. This hopping around different communities is not good for the imam nor for the community. We have brothers who hopped around from city to city and from country to country, and now they're poor, asking people to help pay their bills, because they're not no community feels any allegiance to them, and the benefit that they brought that community was short-lived, and many times when they left, it left a bad taste in their mouth.
And we'll talk about that later, because I remember when I come back to St. Louis in the conversation, points of the conversation that you and I had when I had moved back, and then building off of that, a conversation that I had with Sheikh Salam. Like, that's an important point that I want to dedicate some time to that point, because, and we'll talk about it when we get there. So, mashallah, you established the Dawah Center. Then you're traveling, you're having classes, you're doing what you're able to do, connected to those who you're able to be connected to. And even though this is a time where there is separation, I don't think that it's fair to necessarily disregard, like, a revisionist or hindsight and things like that, to disregard, each side disregarding the other side as non-Salafi at that time, even if there were disagreements and problems, because the Aqidah was the same, the principles a lot of times were the same, and it was just, which is still somewhat the case, disagreeing about an issue or a person, and not even necessarily the mistake that the person might have made or not, but just, do I agree with you and your judgment about a person? I think that's what most of the time has always been the issue. So, alhamdulillah, you brothers are doing your thing in St. Louis, and it's being noticed. It's being noticed outside of St. Louis. And you were talking to us about 2007, Sheikh Salam, Hafizahullah Ta'ala, finding himself in Texas.
Sheikh Salam came. The brother who brought him was named Muhammad Tijar Abu Abdullah. He grew up, he's a Syrian brother who was born in Kuwait and raised in Kuwait and moved to Utah. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to bless his dawah there.
Amen.
And anyway, we met him through Abu Khalil, and I don't know how they knew each other necessarily, but we met him through there, and Abu Khalil was going to the conference, and so me and my wife drove down there, and it was a week-long conference where the Sheikh gave general lectures, questions and answer sessions, but his main core lesson was the explaining Aqidat Ahl Sunnati wal Jama'at by Sheikh Uthaymeen. And Aqil Ingram came down there, and Aqil Ingram was known as Abu Muawiyah at that time, even though he didn't have a Muawiyah. He was known as Abu Muawiyah, and he was known for being a little bit rough and tough on du'at and stuff. He seemed to be from that group that was rough and tough on people. And I even remember while they were there, they were laughing about how he roasted somebody in the class last night and and I guess maybe it was on Pal Talk. Pal Talk is a thing back then. Anyway, Sheikh Salam really put in a great impression on Aqil. In fact, he used to say, man, I used to think I knew Aqidah well until I sat with Sheikh Salam, and he made me understand it. So he spent the most time in Texas, but I think he also went to Utah for a couple of days and maybe Detroit or New York or something like that for a couple of days.
And I'm
during
sorry,
that 2000.
not to cut you off, but just out of respect for our Sheikh and like fulfilling some of his rights. If you don't know who Sheikh Salam is from the students of Uthaymeen rahimahullah ta'ala. He got his master's in Qasim, correct?
No, his master's is from
somewhere else. Yeah.
His master's is from somewhere Egypt.
I remember, I remember he talked about it with regards to it's just paperwork and things like that. Yeah.
But his bachelor's was from Qasim. No.
And he was from the students of Uthaymeen rahimahullah, as is a large number of people from Kuwait.
Anyone who listens and understands Arabic and listens to Sheikh Uthaymeen and then listens to Sheikh Salam automatically knows he was a student of Sheikh Uthaymeen.
No,
automatically.
His method in teaching.
Yeah.
And one of the things I remember going back, because like I said, the only connection I had to St. Louis at that time, and we're moving forward and backwards in the timeline, is my oldest daughter's mother, Taymiyyah, and she ended up moving to Kuwait. And she was asking me like there's a sheikh here that everybody goes to and learns from. And at that time in Philadelphia, at that time, at least for me, and I've never been super connected, but at that time, like the sheikh of Kuwait was Sheikh Mohammed Al-Anjari. And so I'm like, oh, you're talking about Al-Anjari? She's like, no, it's somebody else. It's somebody else that, everybody here goes to his classes, and everybody here, like, he's one of the most outspoken Salafis here in Kuwait. And I remember it being Sheikh Salam. No. And it's unfortunate because we're going to get to this, I'm sure. It's unfortunate that people don't remember the relationship that was had with Sheikh Salam during that time. And that's another example of a person who didn't change from then until now in the way that he conducts himself. And I just wanted to
I'll tell a story, inshallah, when he gets to the city, man, to show how he is, and when he comes to St. Louis, I'll show how he is, and I'll show and I'll show how he, inshallah, I learned something from him, and hopefully everyone can learn something from him,
because the statements that are often made in a critical form, and it's funny because the people who are the most outspoken against him are usually the people from the Ikhwan, the Sorori, Jamiat Ihya Turath. Those are the people who are like usually the most outspoken against, like who hate the mentioning of his name. And so it's always funny to me when there are, some of our brothers upon the minhaj of Ahl Sunnah, when the criticism that they levy towards him, it's as if they don't know anything about him. And it's as if they don't know his history with the scholars that they themselves, appreciate and recognize, and some of the work that he's done with them. And assist. Anyway, I just wanted to.
أنا أقول لك كما قال الشيخ صالح الفوزان حفظه الله الذين ينتسبون إلى السنة هؤلاء
Inshallah. So, no, but anyway, I just wanted to mention that because somebody might know when you say Sheikh Salam, they might not know who he is or know, and we didn't do justice to his history. And I just felt the need to kind of comment a little bit about him.
He'll come up more. He'll come up more and more too. He'll come up more and more. As I said, the first year he mainly came for like 2 to 3 weeks. One whole week was in Texas, in Austin, Texas, in Masjid Ibrahim, and the other 2 weeks were basically split amongst a couple of cities. Utah, he went to Ogden with Muhammad. He went to, I want to say, Detroit, and maybe somewhere in North Carolina. And he landed in New York, so he did something in New York, and then he went back. that was before the masjid opened up. I was blessed with me and my wife to be able to go. She was pregnant with Muawiyah at the time. We came back. I shared with the brothers that we were getting a masjid, and what I learned and what I experienced, just as they shared with me their trip to Muhammad Musa Nasser and what they learned, and that's how we would do it. Whoever went somewhere, we'd share with one another what we were able to gather and learn. Then the masjid opened up. We said Jalal Abu Rob was the first person to give the khutbah. And we, right after Jummah, Hanif had rented a backhoe. And I want to say Labib had brought his jackhammer. And I mean, we said, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. Everybody talked to Jalal maybe for a few minutes, and then we went and started breaking up the floor and digging and building bathrooms, subhanAllah. And this is what we were doing. This is what we spent the next 2 weeks doing. We got our occupancy permit and we were full time. We put in the bathrooms and bought some carpet, everything in the masjid up until 2023, I guess, was probably used, used bookshelves, used shoe shelves, used everything except the carpet and tile, I guess, which couldn't be. But doors, whatever we had, we would get on the low and just trying to make it happen. And what was told to us of everyone not being able to come through financially happened pretty much early on. Early on, that started happening where brothers would say, man, I know I said I could give 100, but I can only give 50. I know I said I could give 100, but I can't give anything. One of my trucks broke down. A lot of this took place. And I'm saying that because it's setting up something for later on. But alhamdulillah, since we were open, and my goal was to be open for everybody, yet only Salafis could speak. The minbar was for Salafis, but the masjid was for everybody. Somalis and other than Somalis and stuff, brothers, people started coming around, Kurdish brothers, Palestinian brothers. And so, the charity box or the sadaqah box in the back of the masjid, which I hope we're able to remove one day, it was able to make up for whatever brothers were missing from our core group of people who said they'd give every month. But we had our classes, we had a weak sound system, and we put our rules up, what is our manhaj, what is our aqeedah and manhaj, and what are the rules of the masjid, and only Salafis can speak. We had that stuff put up, and we built the masjid and made a women's side. And for those who know, we made the women's side with the curtain so that the women could see the men during salat. And we opened up a weekend school pretty much right away. We called it Madrasa to Ibn Abbas. We opened up that weekend school pretty much right away. Sometimes we had up to 120 kids on any given day. And we'd do it from 9 in the morning till 2 in the afternoon. We'd have like 4 or 5 classes. We'd feed them lunch. We'd wrestle with them. We'd have fun. I think me and you might even wrestled somewhere. I don't know, West Pine or the masjid. I don't remember. So the masjid was going like this. Then in the year, I guess we're talking about major events. In the summer of 2008, Sheikh Hisham Al-Arif, he was a teacher in Masjid Al-Aqsa in Palestine. He came to St. Louis. And I guess he had come before to other cities, but our masjid is now open, and Abu Khalil came, and the brother Sharif from Cincinnati came with the sheikh, he was close to the sheikh, a Palestinian brother. And anyway, he came for a week, and Abu Khalil came, Muhammad Tijar came, Muhammad Salamat came. Muhammad Salamat was the main translator, and Muhammad Tijar translated some as well. And we had some telelinks with Abdul Malik Ramadani. And this is back when we had to use phone cards. You had to have phone cards. You had to do all this scraping off stuff, and I remember the line was very weak and it kept hanging up on the sheikh, and it hung up on so many times. And Muhammad Salamat was like, man, I'm not calling him back, man. I'm not calling him back. And I'm like, I'll call him. I don't even know what I'm saying, but I just, as soon as he got on the phone, Lahda, Sheikh, Lahda, you know. So I'd put him on and I would keep doing it. You know, I'd keep calling him until he finished his lecture. Hisham al-Arif was there. And at this point, I began to realize that a lot of the brothers who were with us, that it could be a problem in the future, because the Sheikh was well known for using the word Salafi. You know, for those who know Sheikh al-Albani, and he's a student of Sheikh al-Albani, then Sheikh al-Albani used the word Salafi much more than Bin Baz or Uthaymeen did. Maybe much more than 10 Mashaykh from Saudi Arabia put together did. Sheikh al-Albani used to use the word left and right, Salafi this, Salafi that. And Hisham al-Arif used it even more than him. And I remember the brothers who opened the masjid with us, they came to me and said, why is the Sheikh saying Salafi all the time, Salafi? You know, Salaf this, Salaf that. And I'm like, man, because we're Salafi, you know? And it was just like, because we're Salafi, man, you know, this is the way it is. And so I realized there's going to probably be some issues in the future because of these brothers who say they're with us. They're not understanding what we're on. You know, they're not understanding what this is. And unless they learn quickly, there could be some issues, you know. But Sheikh Hisham al-Arif came, and we had the best time. In fact, it was so nice. You know, I'm a planner, you know. I went and looked online and found up how to organize a conference and the things you need to do and all this. And I had made us a list, and these guys were in charge of parking, and these guys were in charge of food, and these guys were in charge of guests, because we had maybe 100 or more guests come from out of town, people bringing their wives and their kids and just coming and having a nice time. Sheikh Hisham al-Arif, everyone was so organized, and we had meetings every Saturday morning. What's your job? Parking. Okay, what you gonna do? We bought little radios so they could talk to the people could talk to one another. These guys are in charge of trash, and everybody knew exactly what to do. Hisham al-Arif, Sheikh Hisham al-Arif, he said, man, I'm never going to another city other than St. Louis. I'm only gonna come to St. Louis. And he was nice. He was like a grandfather to us and this and that. He left, and as a note, about 2 weeks later, the brother Sharif called us, and he was in Toronto with Ali al-Halabi. And Ali al-Halabi and the Jordanian Mashayikh were starting to have some beef with Hisham al-Arif. There was starting to be some beef. Hisham al-Arif was starting to call them Mumayyi'een and stuff like this. And there was some beef there. So he said, man, the program for Ali al-Halabi isn't for another week or so, but he's here and he's looking for somewhere to go. It's not even going to cost you guys any money, man. We just bring them to you. You want them there? And after seeking advice, we said, no, we don't want to bring them. We don't want to bring Ali al-Halabi here, because if someone says Hisham al-Arif was here and he says something back, it's just going to confuse the people. It's going to confuse the people. So we don't want to confuse the people. And so we had an opportunity to bring Ali al-Halabi, but we chose not to, in order to not confuse the people. And we continued on this way, and we went back to our normal classes. We also met the brother Sheikh Samir at this time. Once Sheikh Hisham al-Arif's program was over, Sheikh Samir Mahmoud from Fresno, the one that knows Sheikh Mansour al-Khalidi. He's an old Palestinian sheikh, but he's a student of, he has met with and sat and learned from Sheikh Bin Baz, Sheikh Uthaymeen, Sheikh al-Albani, and Sheikh Muqbil. He's met all of them and was blessed to sit and learn from all of them. And anyway, after the program was over, he came and he did a hijama workshop. So we all learned hijama, you know, and how to do and how to perform hijama. And he did it over like it was a nice period of time where he went through a lot of details and showed us how to do it with fire cupping as well as with the suction pumps. And so So we did that, and then after they left and went back, then Muhammad Tajar, he went home, and Salamat went home, and Abu Khalil went home, and Sheikh Samir went back to Fresno, and we continued in our classes and stuff like this. Then we had the opportunity to bring Sheikh Salam. No, he didn't come to America yet. He didn't come yet. Sheikh Salam came back the next summer, 2008. This year, he went to LA to Sheikh Farid, but he went in the mountains. They did a camping thing in the mountains.
With Sheikh Farid Abdullah?
With Sheikh Farid Abdullah, no.
Inshallah.
So Sheikh Farid Abdullah was there. Of course, Abu Khalil went, Muhammad Tajar went, Muhammad Salamat lived in LA at that time. He was a translator, me, Saeed, Zubair, I don't remember, a couple more brothers took my van. I had a van, like an old Scooby-Doo van type of van. We took my van and drove to California. And then he went to Chicago from there. We drove home and caught a train up to Chicago, and spent whatever days we could with the Sheikh there. Aqil was translator in Chicago. He did his book. He did his explanation of questions and answers for the youth. Aqil was translating that there in the MCC in Chicago. Of course, Muhammad Tajar was there. And then he went somewhere else. I think he went back towards the East Coast so he could leave from New York. And I wasn't able to go that year. So to those places, I got away from my job to go to California and then to Chicago. And then we came back and the classes continued as normal. In the meantime, I guess after this, we started bringing Abu Khalil to do Sunan and Nasa'i once a month. Once a month, we started bringing Abu Khalil to do Sunan and Nasa'i. And, it was a detailed study of Sunan and Nasa'i through the Rijal, going through the chain, going through explanation of the hadith. We'd sit there 5 hours and maybe we'd go through 10, 15 hadith or something. You know what I mean? And he was taking a list. We had a checklist who was there for what classes so they could get this and that for those hadith and stuff like that. So we started doing that. He married a woman who was a new shahada. Abu Khalil was somebody who used to always say, something like, with the meaning of, I don't remember the phrase off the top of my head right now. It escapes me, but something like closeness brings animosity, or proximity brings animosity, or something like this. So as long as I'm in Alabama and you guys are here, we like each other. But if we're too close to each other and I'm living here and this and that, we're not going to like each other. But we used to always beg him, come. He came for a couple things. Like I said, he came for Hisham al-Arif. He came for other things that we'd have a program with him. And then we kept, come for Sunan Nasa'i, man. Come for Sunan Nasa'i. And he agreed. But if he's going to come to St. Louis, he needs to be married. Needs to be married. So there was a new shahada. She was an older Italian woman. She had a daughter and a son who were drunks and drug addicts. They ended up taking shahada as well. Anyway, he married her, and the condition was that we'd have to give him $600 a month for the classes, and we'd have to pick him up and take him back. And basically, we'd keep his books with us because he had the Dar Kitab al-Hikmah bookstore at that time. We'd keep his books with us, and then we'd sell them during the Dora, that we'd have once a month on the weekends. And so we gave him $300, $600 a month, $300 for the wife in St. Louis, $300 for the wife in Alabama, Khalil. And we would do this every month. And one of the things I benefited from Abu Khalil was if the Mashayikh are around, then we don't talk. And so if any sheikh was in America, then it didn't matter where they were, in New York or wherever they were, he didn't have his classes. If they were online classes or in person, you need to be either listening online to the sheikh or going to the sheikh. You don't need to be listening to me. And so he had this practice or habit, whatever, this principle. And Sheikh Salam was coming back in the year 2009.
So Sheikh Salam came to the States 3 times then, huh?
4,
mashallah.
07, 08, 09, and 10.
Okay, mashallah.
So, as I said, the first year was Austin and a couple small spots. The second year was LA and Chicago and a couple small spots. And then 2009, he had just married a new wife and he was getting a house ready for her. So we brought her to America and they spent 2 months. So Sheikh Salam spent 2 months. And he was coming to St. Louis for 2 weeks. He was going to come to St. Louis for 2 weeks. He was going to New York, where he lands, and spend a week up there. And then he would go to Washington, D.C. for a week. And then he would go to Seattle and Modesto. And then St. Louis for 2 weeks. And then go back to the East Coast, Philly, D.C., Jersey, New York, like this. So we remember we have this program with Abu Khalil every month. Well, the program's going to come. Sheikh Salam is going to be in America for 2 months, and Abu Khalil needs to provide his second wife with $300 a month, which is what they agreed upon, which we need to provide. So he doesn't know what to do. Like, how do I get the money to her? And Sheikh Salam's in the country. So I said, listen, I know it's the principle to not talk when the sheikh is here, but no one in St. Louis is going to travel to New York while the sheikh is here because the sheikh's coming to St. Louis in a couple weeks. So no one's going to go up there and then he's coming here. He's going to be here for 2 whole weeks. So no one's going to go from there. And this is the time you're supposed to have it. So you can have your program now. Get the $600, all that. The brothers will come get you and take you back. Then when we leave, you can have your program again. You know what I mean? And give her the $300 and, everything will be fine. Well, he reluctantly agreed that this would be the best way, although he didn't want to teach when the sheikh was in the country. In the meantime, her son and her daughter had apostated from Islam. As I said, they were drunks and drug addicts and new Muslims and not wanting to give up music and drugs and drinking. So they left Islam. And this caused an issue for his wife, the wife in St. Louis. And something happened. She came in the masjid and she said something or did something. I don't know. I don't remember. I could find out. It's just in the other room to answer, But my wife said something to her. And I guess her being emotional and a new shahada and didn't like that my wife corrected her. My wife was being mean and this and that. And so while I was in New York with the sheikh, because I went to New York and then I wasn't going to DC, because at this point we had realized that me and Muhammad Tajar were talking more and we had become friends, and we had realized that when the sheikh goes somewhere, the brothers say they're going to take care of him, but a lot of times they don't take care of him. They don't pick him up on time. They don't make sure he eats. They don't make sure he has breakfast. They don't take him to the store to get whatever medicine. They're kind of negligent towards him because they have their other responsibilities and they're not free to just take care of the sheikh. But the sheikh is in a foreign country and doesn't know how to get around and do things, So we said, we're not going to take the sheikh to any city anymore unless one of us can be there, meaning Muhammad Tajar or me or Aqil. One of us three had to be there because we know us three will go way out of our way to make sure that he's taken care of. And so since he was going to New York and then DC, I went to New York. And then when he went to DC, I let Aqil take care of it. And then he went to Seattle. Me and Aqil both met up in Seattle. Then he went back to DC. I went to Modesto. And from Modesto, we came to St. Louis.
So St. Louis was the final stop in the
no. No, it was New York is a week, DC's a week, Seattle's a week, Modesto's a week, St. Louis is 2 weeks, so that's 6. And then there were 2 more weeks after that. We went to DC, we went to Philadelphia for a week, and then New York, New Jersey for a week. So anyway, I traveled everywhere with the Sheikh except the DC trip because Aqil had him, you know. And I don't think Aqil was supposed to be the translator for Seattle at first, and then he did, and so we ended up both being there. Anyway, Abu Khalil did his program, but as I said, there was some altercation between Muawiyah and Abu Khalil's wife, and then the Bosnian sisters ganged up on my wife and were saying something, and my wife called me crying and telling me these people, Abu Khalil is going to have a meeting with her after the class, after Sunnah Nasai class, and he's going to make a judgment and rule and this and that. And I called back and I said, man, if any of y'all try to call my wife into the room, man, it's going to be a serious problem, you know? It's going to be a real serious problem. I mean, if I got to catch a flight back, I got to leave the Sheikh here, man. I mean, my wife comes first, man. It's going to be a problem. And alhamdulillah, the meeting never took place, but there was some animosity or whatever you want to call it. There was some pressure and stuff was boiling up. So I came home for the week. Things calmed down, I guess, but you know, it was tension. Then I went to Seattle and then Modesto, and then I came back with the Sheikh. The brothers attended the Sheikh's lessons, and then we tried to get Abu Khalil to come to talk to Sheikh Salam to figure some of this stuff out. Abu Khalil came to the city, but he didn't want to talk to Sheikh Salam. I guess he just wanted to visit his wife or whatever the case was, and he never came to the meeting. But we had a meeting in the hotel room. The Bosnian brothers came there. Sheikh Salam came from his hotel room to Muhammad Tajar's hotel room. And they made their complaints, and Sheikh Salam said, listen, his ruling was, and his not ruling, but his advice was to continue and to leave everything the way it was, me being in charge and Yusuf being, you know, like second in charge, or however you want to say it, and continue working together, and to wipe out the slate. Don't fold up the piece of paper and keep it in your pocket for later, but rather get rid of the paper altogether and work together. They said, but his wife is making people leave Islam. And he said, no one makes anyone leave Islam. What if what you say right now causes Muawiyah to leave Islam? Can we say about you that you're making people leave Islam? And the Sheikh was very hard on me. Every time I tried to say something, he picked up I think he had like a Snapple bottle or something. It was a glass bottle, you know. He said, "Miss, shut up." Like, good, you know. Because he didn't want anyone to think that, you know, there was some type of favoritism being given because I traveled with him and such.
And allow me to say right there, if you will, that's an etiquette, because I don't want people to get it misconstrued. That's an etiquette that is used with somebody that there's a relationship with.
No,
that's not something that the Sheikh does with somebody who, like, he's not.
He wasn't gonna hit me anyway.
I know, that's what I'm saying. It's a relationship that a parent could have with a son, or a friend could have with a beloved, And that's an important, like the Prophet ﷺ had relationships with people. He would poke them in the chest and, push them and things like that, not in a forceful or aggressive way, but in a way of, and like you say, to not have the message be misunderstood. So I just want to mention that in case somebody, takes it out of context.
So after this, and at this time, maybe before this a little bit, we got to remember that there's a brother that came to St. Louis named Rashid or Khalil Al-Albani. And he used to pick up the Sheikh and bring him to the Durus because I was busy with other things.
Sheikh Salam or?
Pick up Sheikh Salam from the hotel.
Okay.
Bring him to the masjid, take him home at night, pick him up for Jummah, stuff like this, if he needed something. Because I was busy taking care of masjid affairs, We had a lot of guests from out of town, and it was a big deal, We had a nice program. And
I remember hearing about it after the fact. Like I told you, people, you from Abu Ma'awi in them city, like they were, that was because I didn't even know what was happening, subhanAllah.
So Muhammad Tajar asked the Bosnian brothers, what are you guys going to do? Are you going to listen to the Sheikh's advice? And they said, we'll consult Abu Khalil and see what we should do. And he said, you got the Sheikh here. Abu Khalil's in town. His wife is calling us, trying to figure out where he's at. We know he's here in St. Louis. You know what I mean? He refused to come. The Sheikh is telling you what to do, and you're gonna say you're gonna consult him. And this is Muhammad Tajar talking, and they said, yeah, and they left. Our program was pretty much over in St. Louis. We were traveling maybe in the next couple days. It was almost over, if not already over. And we left for Philly. While I was on a plane
Where'd you guys go in Philly?
Germantown,
mashallah.
Germantown Masjid. This is right when they first got that huge warehouse that they lost.
Yeah, I didn't know they lost this, subhanAllah. I know the brother had passed away and left him as an inheritance or something like that, as we'll see, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah, I believe they lost it. Yeah. Anyway, a huge warehouse. I mean, could hold 10,000 people or something. I mean, it was huge. Yeah.
Where was that?
So we went.
Sheikh Salam coming to Philly. I mean, I know it happened. I'm just trying to think.
Right.
I was more in Southwest. Like I said, I didn't get around to Germantown that much. And this is it. You said in 09 this is?
Oh, this is 09.
I'm truck driving. That's why. I'm truck driving now. I just started truck driving. Okay, now I'm just trying to see how I missed that whole, but I'm truck driving. I just started truck driving. Okay.
So we flew to DC, to Philly. While we're on the way to Philly, Abu Khalil leaves a voice message and says, listen, I think we need to make some changes in the masjid. Yusuf needs to be in charge, and you just need to step down, and Yusuf needs to be in charge, and that's it. And you got to remember, you have to know something, that Abu Khalil, for some reason, didn't even used to like Yusuf, and he used to, I used to say, man, I got to get this guy Yusuf, man. I got to get him to come to the masjid more. I mean, he has a class on Tuesday night. He comes 5 minutes before, and when his class is over, he prays and leaves. He don't stay around. He don't have nothing to do with the construction of the masjid, really. He don't have nothing to do with the everyday run-ins of it, man. I got to get this guy, because they look at him. So if they see him not doing anything, they don't do anything. I got to figure out a way to get, man, be careful, man. You might get him involved, and you're going to be in. Anyway,
yeah.
Anyway, the point is, I'm saying it because then he tells me in the airplane, now Yusuf needs to be in charge. And I called him back, and he wouldn't answer the phone. And so I left a voice message after a couple times calling him. And, Abu Khalil never left his house, really, So he's there. Or, he could have called me back. Anyway, I said, listen, Sheikh Salam met with us, and he said that we should keep it the same way it is. And he's a sheikh. He's a person of knowledge. And, you had the opportunity to be at the meeting and you chose not to be. So we're going to continue with Sheikh Salam's advice, and that's it. So we had the Philadelphia conference. When we got out the car, Sheikh Salam was actually not feeling well. So he didn't come for Jummah. Abdurrahman al-Afriqi was the imam at that time.
Yeah, Abdurrahman, yeah.
And so I got out the car, and it was like, "Salam alaikum, Sheikh," trying to kiss me on my head and everything. No, I'm not the Sheikh, because I guess I'm big guy is a big guy, So I said, no, I'm not the Sheikh. I'm Abu Muawiyah from St. Louis. I'm just with the Sheikh. The Sheikh's not feeling well, but I'm coming to Jummah with you guys, to meet you guys and talk to you about setup and all this stuff. So Abdurrahman al-Afriqi gave the khutbah in that big warehouse. It was real nice. And then we had the program. Hassan Somali translated some of the lessons. Abdurrahman al-Afriqi translated some of them. I don't remember who else, if anybody. I'm sure somebody else did. They all loved him. Everybody in our masjid, Sheikh Salam loved him. From Hassan. This is where I met Abu Safwan in Chicago at Sheikh Salam's thing in 2008. In Chicago is when I met Abu Safwan. He had traveled from Bloomington to Chicago to see Sheikh Salam. And everybody in our masjid, like I said, everybody in our masjid was, very pleased with Sheikh Salam's position and attendance and, who he was. And no one had a problem with any of this. And while we were in Philly, we were supposed to go to a certain masjid. I don't remember the name of it right now. And I guess they had called Muhammad Anjari and asked him, should they bring Sheikh Salam? And he told them no. So they canceled that lesson. But we still went to another masjid on the corner. Like you go upstairs. It's got an upstairs and a downstairs. It's on a corner. I don't remember the name of it.
Oh, that's Mukbil.
Mukbil. And then there's another one, Ahl Hadith or something.
Ahl Hadith in Southwest. That's where I used to be at.
Yeah. Ahl Hadith is the one that refused to have him come there. While Sheikh Salam was there, and this is not necessarily related to St. Louis Dawah, but it is to some extent, as we'll get further on in the later teens of the 2000s, right? Hassan Somali was translating, and Sheikh Salam asked, he would go 4 or 5 hours. And he said, to give the people a break, he said, you mind if I tell a story? I mean, I'm here to teach you about Islam, but I'll tell you a story. It has a benefit in it, but it's something light. You guys came here to learn. I'll just keep teaching this. But if you guys want to break in something lighthearted, break up a little bit, then I'll tell you a story. He went to go tell a story, and it was with another sheikh. I don't remember the story exactly. It's recorded. But Hassan Somali was translated, and everybody was laughing, and because they could tell what the outcome of the story was going to be, And then he said, yeah, and it was Abu Bakr al-Jazairi. And Hassan Somali's face just went flat, and so you knew there was something, I guess maybe stuff happened from there. Then we went to New York, and it finished out in multiple masjids. We went to Masjid Rahma 2009 and 2010. We went to Philly just 2009. We went to Masjid Noor in Lefrak City both years. Number of different cities and masjids. Masjid al-Ikhwa, which is no longer there in the Bronx. We went to he went there both years. Number of different places. But so I came back. When I came back after New York and the Sheikh went back, all the Bosnian brothers were gone. They had left and they had a meeting. And Muharram and Hassan were very close at that time. And I guess when they had their break-off meeting, they invited Hassan, but Hassan didn't want to break off. My brother-in-law, Abdurrahman, didn't want to break off right away. He broke off later on, I guess due to peer pressure from his wife, because his wife was very close to their wives. And this is, the Kaid of the Nisa is Shadid, or Shadid. So while the Kaid of Shaitan is Da'if, the Kaid of Shaitan of the Nisa is Shadid. But Anyway, when I came back to the masjid, it was kind of empty from the Bosnian brothers. But like I said, a lot of them thought that they were, and they even went around saying this, that they were just that our masjid was going to be closed up, and that we were no longer on the Sunnah. And I mean, their wives went around to women and told them this. The brothers were telling brothers this, and this is because they thought when they left and they took all the brothers, they were taking all the money, not knowing that the majority of brothers who were giving had either stopped giving or cut their payments in half due to different things over the last year and a half. And so there were Palestinians and there were Somalis and there were other people who were coming and they were giving and making up for theirs. So when they left, they didn't take anything but maybe a couple $100 a month, you know? And so the masjid was able to survive. I remember Sheikh Salam asking me, because the day after the meeting, we had a lunch in West County with Abid and Jamal and the Arab brothers out there in West County. And Sheikh Salam asked me, do you think they're going to leave? And I said, yes. And he could see me sad, you know, like I don't like division. I don't like it. And he could see I was sad. And he said, okay, it's okay. It's good it's better. And I said, how can it be better, Sheikh? How can division, when Allah commands us to unity, how can division be better for us? Doesn't make sense. And he said, listen, a tree has roots, it has a trunk, and it has limbs. All three of these are fighting for water and the nutrients from the sun. If you let the limbs grow too much, then it's going to kill the trunk and the roots, and the tree is going to die. So you call in a professional tree trimmer, and he knows which limbs to get rid of and which limbs to keep in order to make the tree stronger. They're those limbs that need, those people who are leaving are those limbs that need to be cut. And you're the trunk and the roots that needs to be made strong. So let them leave. I said, wallahi, Sheikh, it's a beautiful example. It's a beautiful example, but I just don't see how being divided is good for us. And then Sheikh Samir from Fresno, he said, listen, Abu Muawiyah, if what you're saying is true, then these guys are going to split up amongst themselves because division spreads more division. And some of them will be back, and what Sheikh Salam told you will be true. Give it 3 to 6 months, and you'll see. Wallahi, akhi, wallahi. Within a month, our masjid was stronger than ever. We were no longer walking on eggshells. We were no longer dancing around people's feelings. We were no longer worried about trying to get people involved who didn't want to be involved. And we were able to just, you know, those people who didn't understand, we can't say Salafi every other word. You know, we could say Salafi every word if we wanted to. You know, we were just free to be, and the dawah became even stronger. And those brothers had left. And like Sheikh Samir said, within months, they split from amongst each other. Some of them went back to Hosage. Some of them went out to West County with Jamal because Manara wasn't open yet. Some of them went to Anvar's place out in Limay. And some of them came back to us, and some of them stopped practicing it all. Allah Musta'an.
Yeah, I know. I mean, I don't know too much of the. I know some brothers from, obviously, St. Louis has a diverse community, and I know some of the Bosnian brothers. And obviously, like my personality, I only get around in Grand Masjid for the most part. But I know there were some concerning things that had happened, and this is a point to make. And there's a lot of points to make, and I don't want to make too many points, but one of the main things that we constantly, you know, stay on is consistency.
No.
A group of people who have been, if nothing else, Salafi, inshallah, and like constantly upon that, as opposed to, you know, disavowing from it or criticizing it or, just blatantly being opposed, to it with, things that are, takfiri in nature and irhabi in nature. And it's the affairs. That's why it's called fitna, because fitna, yumahas, it burns away and removes away the impurities. And I'm not, speaking on anybody, like we mentioned to begin with. It's not a praise or criticism of anybody, except to say that consistency for a person, like the statement of the Prophet Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is an important one, because it's not just a concept or a theme or a slogan. It's a reality. La tazalu ta'ifatun min ummati zahirina ala al-haq. There will not cease to be, that's that consistency, a group of my people, apparent or victorious, even in another translation of it, upon the truth. And that's that quality that you want to look for in a community. And it's not something that's unique to St. Louis, without a doubt. It's, it's in a lot of people. And that's what is from the things that are looked for and sought after and recognizes that consistency. And not just consistency, meaning stagnation, being the same spot for 20, because that's not consistency. That's stagnant. Consistency is a progression that is constantly moving forward and in the right direction upon the path. And so that's just something, that, like I said, a lot of that history, I know, because I came, because even though, right, this is during that time where there are, and me, if you know me, the thing I detest the most is the word sides or, this group and that group. But this is at the time when I'm in Philly, and like when I would come to St. Louis, I would still go to Grand Masjid, because those brothers it's a Salafi Masjid, and these are the brothers that are trying to be Salaf. What do you remember when was this book? This had to have been what, 08 or 09 when I visited. I was visiting Taymiyyah. I was visiting my daughter, actually, Taymiyyah, but I remember coming to the masjid after it had opened.
Yeah, I remember you coming. I don't remember exactly, but I remember you coming to the masjid. I want to say it was probably 08, because I think it was right after Sheikh Salam. I
think so, yeah, because I think so. Because after that, after Sheikh Salam and the conferences, like I said, I was truck driving in 09, so I was like almost completely disconnected from everything. As a truck driver, from the downsides of it, may Allah, give us may Allah take care of our needs. From the downsides of it, and it has upsides, but from the downsides of it is the amount of disconnect that you end up having with the community, because being on the road and constantly, going and traveling, and then when you come home, the exhaustion and only being there for a certain amount of time, and even if you work local, how it can affect your progression. So during that time, I'm like out of it. And then in, I think, the end of 09, I stopped truck driving, but then financially everything is just tight. And Philly it was a hard time for us financially. And so towards the end of that time, my wife is finishing up her degree, and I got a 2-year-old, a 1-year-old, and I think she's pregnant. And it's time to figure out something financially. So I make the decision to come back to St. Louis to work with my ex-brother-in-law at a cell phone store, and and one of the things that sparked my move back to St. Louis, and I want, before we enter that, I want you to touch on this, if you will, is that I was talking to what's the brother name? You know who I'm talking about. Not Abu Rumesa.
From Masjid Rahma?
No,
from Philly. Yeah.
Philly.
He had authentic statements.
Authentic statements, yeah. I'm talking to him because him and Hamza had a relationship, and I'm talking to him, and I'm like, yeah, I'm from St. Louis. He's like, oh, you're from Abu Muawiyah in them city. I'm like, yeah, I know Abu Muawiyah in them. And he's like, yeah, we was just in Kuwait together, or it was either just after Sheikh Salam or the program in Kuwait, Ma'had al-Furqan. And I remember hearing that and thinking, like, subhanAllah, I'm here. I'm doing, like I say, I have small classes here and there, and I'm in Philly, but I'm not progressing because there's like during this time it was a time, at least for me, and maybe it was just because I was at work, there was not a lot of people coming to the States to visit, and it wasn't like it was before, and getting overseas was still my agenda, but I had to wait another year before I could go. So when he mentioned that, I'm like, oh, if they're involving with scholarship and there's visits and there's classes, you know, I need to go back home. I need to go and be around people who are going to be trying to get knowledge and connected to the Mashaykh, because this is our foundation and this is our minhaj. And so I end up coming back. You know, that's one of the main motivations why in my mind, and yes, there was, you know, an opportunity for work, but the main thing in my mind was I got to go learn this religion. And, you know, they seem to be doing something in St. Louis that I'm not doing here. And so I'd rather be somewhere where something is being done than, you know, just, you know, everybody's Salafi, mashallah. There's a lot of Salafia. There's a lot of good in Philadelphia. But for myself at that time, we weren't doing anything. And so I come back home.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
I was just going to say, talk about, because this is 2010. This would have been the first year you guys go to Kuwait.
Yeah.
So talk about
when we get to 2010. Yeah.
Yeah. Are we still in 2009? Or was?
Yeah, I'm gonna name drop just a few minutes, just so there's some clarity of things that come up in the future. Like we said, in New York, Abu Yusuf Khalifa, he was translating for the most part everywhere we went. We also visited Al Basira, where Zahid was, and when he had just moved to New Jersey. And then Aqil was in DC. And then Aqil was in Seattle that year. And as we said before that, Sheikh Farid was in LA. Also in Modesto was Abu Muhammad al-Maghribi. He was a translator.
Oh, mashallah.
For Sheikh Salam. And then we came to St. Louis, and it was a number of different people. Muhammad Shabana from Columbus, Ohio. Abu Dhahira came from Columbia, Missouri for a short time. But most of the translation was done by Muhammad Shabana. Then we went to, as I said, Philly, and it was Hassan Somali and Abdurrahman al-Afriqi and others. And then New York, Jersey, the same thing, basically probably Abu Yusuf, and I don't remember everybody. Maybe Aqil as well. I'm not sure. Mufti Muhammad Munir, he translated some at that Masjid
Al-Sunnah. Before he went to school, huh?
No, it was after. He was home on the summertime.
Oh, in the summertime.
Yeah, he was home on the summertime, but it was while he was in school. And so there was a number of people, like I said, Abu Muhammad al-Maghribi. And at this time, there was no beef with Sheikh Salam. You know, there was no beef with anybody with Sheikh Salam. And I say that because Sheikh Salam becomes, in the later years, a problem for some people in our city. At this time, like I said, Khalil al-Albani is driving everybody around. Everything's good. When I come back, all the Bosnians are gone. This is still 2009, that summer. And we just continued with our classes and just continued growing, and we didn't care. Me and Muhammad Tajar, the brother from Utah who brought Sheikh Salam, we were always trying to figure out a way, because he has a masjid there. And he was always trying to figure out a way to become more independent for the dawah. And I was trying to figure out a way that I didn't have to hustle on Craigslist and stuff like that, selling used furniture or something, you know, that I'd find in the dumpster and or for free on Craigslist, and then fix up and make nice and sell it. So we started looking for a way to make some money. What kind of business? And he would look in Kuwait because he was from Kuwait, and, you know, that's an option for him or something. So anyway, we end up coming up with the idea of a translated program like Al Basira had. Al Basira's was like 2 or 3 weeks with Umrah, and we were gonna have 2 months, you know. And if we had 50 people and everybody paid this amount and this and that, then we could both end up with $25,000 cash and, you know what I mean, have a nice program and be free for the dawah. Well, 50 people didn't sign up. It was only 13 of us. And out of 13 of us, maybe only 6 people paid the full price. But the program was so nice. You know, we had a lesson after Fajr. We had a lesson after, and then we had breakfast, and then we had Arabic for 3 hours, and then we had lunch and dhuhr and rest, and then 2 lessons after Asr, a lesson after Maghrib, and 1 or 2 lessons after Isha every day except Jummah. I mean, it was so much. Aqil Ingram went.
And this is for 2 months straight, right?
We did it for 3 years straight, actually.
I'm talking about the first trip.
It was for what?
For 2 months, the first trip?
2 months straight. We went like on January 26th or something like this, and we came back like March 1st or something. And we were able to make Umrah. That was my first Umrah. Yeah, man, it was just a blessed trip overall.
You were mentioning
Aqil didn't go to the first one. Aqil didn't go to the first one. We had a brother named Anwar, who's now an imam in Memphis. He was from Muhammad Tijar's community, a Palestinian brother, but he's now an imam in Memphis, and he translated for the Mashayikh while we were there. Him and Abu Hamza, if you remember Abu Hamza, the Palestinian brother who lives here.
The Jordanian?
Big thick beard. No, Palestinian, short, kind of dark with a big thick beard. No, his name's Bassam, Abu Hamza.
Yeah, you talking about Magic. You talking about the Jordanian, where they got like Shiite relatives. Bassam's his brother. They go back and forth to Kuwait all the time.
No. I'm talking about Abu Hamza, who's from here, from Kuwait.
Oh, Kuwait. Yeah. I remember. I know Abu Hamza. Yeah.
So anyway, they were translating for the Mashayikh and stuff.
Who were some of the teachers that were involved the first time?
Sheikh Falah, rahimahullah, taught Usul al-Sunnah of Imam Ahmed. And in the middle of it, he got called to the UK to finish an operation. So Sheikh Abu Salat finished it for him. We had Sheikh Abu Salat, Muhammad Isham Tahiri. Most of you say Abu Salat today, people don't know who you're talking about. You got to say Muhammad Isham Tahiri. Sheikh Salam, Sheikh Khalid al-Qahtani. We had maybe a sitting with him, but he didn't teach. Sheikh Hamid al-Hajri. I want to say Sheikh Faraj, but I'm not sure if Sheikh Faraj was the second year or just the first year. Sheikh Abdullah Shreika. Sheikh Abdullah Shreika. Those are the ones coming to my mind right now. Sheikh Abdullah Shreika, Sheikh Hamid al-Hajri, Sheikh Salam, Sheikh Falah, Sheikh Abu Salat, Sheikh Diham. Yes, Sheikh Diham taught the Mu'amalat. And Sheikh Hamid taught the Ibadat from Minhaj al-Salikin. Yeah.
And Sheikh Falah Thani.
Sheikh Falah Thani, we met him at the university, but he didn't participate in the Dawah, no. He lived far away.
Sheikh Hamid
Sheikh Hamid al-Uthman. I think we had him in the second Dawah, but we met him in the first one.
Yeah,
but we met him in the first one. I don't remember a class in the first Dawah, but maybe, but I don't think so. But we used to meet him and go to his house and have lunch with them and go to Jummah with them and stuff like this. And that was 2010. Then Sheikh Salam came back in the summer of 2010 to America. This time he came for 1 month, landed in New York. I don't remember everywhere he went. New York, DC, St. Louis, and somewhere else, but I don't remember right now. 4 cities. When he came, some of the Bosnian brothers came for the program. Khalil Al-Albani was still around, and he would pick him up from the airport and stuff. I mean, from the hotel and stuff like this. All the brothers were, the rest of the brothers around. We had a wonderful program, and around that time you came home, or maybe right after that, or right
It'd be right
before
after.
that.
Yeah, it was right after.
And but that was our first trip to Kuwait, and then right after that, and then I guess we just continued our classes, trying to better ourselves. Abu Khalil was no longer with us. He was going to the Bosnians. They had something they called the Hadith Center in South County until they got the place that they bought, the church or whatever that they bought, and turned into a masjid. And so Abu Khalil was no longer with us, but we still had Allah replaced him with Muhammad Tajar. And Muhammad Tajar, for those who don't know, is the one who translated Sheikh Uthaymeen's explanation of Aqidatul Wasatiyah for Dar es Salaam, the 2-volume one. That was him who did that. So he's a qualified translator and student of knowledge.
And our brother, and we love him dearly.
Yeah. But I'm saying for them, well, you replaced Abu Khalil with Muhammad Tajar. Yes, replaced him with someone qualified, And so I had him, and I still had Sheikh Samir, who was like someone that Abu Khalil looked up to. Sheikh Samir never left me in this time. He would advise us. And then, I started having a mashayikh as well with Muhammad Tajar and others. And we continued until Sheikh Salam, he kind of got questioned by the feds on the way out of in 2010 when he was going back to Kuwait. And he said, I'm never going to let them talk to me and deal with me like that again. I'm not going back to America. Although he had a 10-year visa, he only used 4 years of it. And he doesn't want to be put in that situation where he's frisked and talked bad to and made to seem like he's a bad guy or something. And so he stopped coming. But at that point, we're going there. We're going to Kuwait. So it's not that big of a hit, although it's only a few of us going. It is it's still for me. I mean, personally, I'm still benefiting from the sheikh, even though the whole country's not, we had a brother named Dawood Abdul Latif. He was living in St. Louis. He was originally from New Jersey. I think he grew up in Abu Muslim's community. Now he lives in Philly. I think the brothers, when they went up there, I think they ate dinner at his house and stuff. Labib and said that Hassan and them, when they went to a Philly conference one time, they met with Dawood Abdul Latif. Anyway, he was living in St. Louis. He went on the first conference. It was me and him from St. Louis who went, the Mahar al-Furqan conference. And I mean, like I said, our dawah is just growing. At this point, we don't necessarily know Sheikh Salam's not coming back yet. It's the middle of 2010. And we just continue our classes. Our Arabic is improving. Now we have connections to the ulama, because while Abu Khalil himself was who we would go to before, and he could look up stuff, Muhammad Tajar had all these sheikhs' phone numbers in his phone that we could call at the drop of a dime. And so it's only making us better by having a stronger connection to the ulama, even though there was the division. Allah musta'an. So, I mean, that's where we're at in 2010. I don't know where you want to go from there, but
yeah, we'll pick up next time with me coming back, and then I remember you and I don't remember a lot of the details of the conversation. I just remember certain things that stuck out in my mind after that, and us coming back together, and then Mahad al-Furqan year 2, year 3, and I think that was the first time for me, for sure. But for you, was that the first time being introduced to Dawla Ali ibn Abi Talib, or?
I guess there was a brief introduction to it in the first Dawla, but my Arabic was so weak that I didn't know what was what,
No. And then Markaz al-Thaqafi, the Arabic program, and then you leaving St. Louis to go and take up residency in Kuwait. And then just the trips up until maybe so like from 2010 up until maybe 2015 or 16, which is the first time, because one of the things that definitely is a point to be made and something to be understood is how fitna puts an end to good things. Like we talked about it with Ma'had and the Islamic Institute of the Institute of Islamic and Arabic Sciences in America in Virginia, and how fitna and deviation put an end to a good thing. And that theme, I think, is going to be something that is relevant in these next 5, if not 10 years, but really only 5 years, because after that 5 years, 6-year period, it doesn't put an end to the good thing in this circumstance, but it put an end to certain good things. But it also,
sure.
it causes, some things positive do come out of it, but the positivity coming out of that consistency. And so talking about that type of relationship, about how fitna can put an end to good things, and how it, put an end to Ma'had al-Furqan, how, the first time the fitna kind of enters into St. Louis, and this is before the quote unquote larger scale separation. But that conversation in Kuwait that we had with Sheikh Salam, and the first time the fitna is really, at least, because it's not the first time, because obviously you guys had the fitna with the separation from the Bosnian community, but from the community at that point in time, and these issues that to a large extent I think were non-relevant in St. Louis. A lot of the fitna that might have been in other cities, division over people and personalities and who's on it, who's off it, and these type of things, I don't think that was ever an issue per se in St. Louis until maybe 2015, 2016.
Yeah, of course. I mean, we knew about it, but even though Abu Khalil might have had a position that I don't want to even say was against Sheikh Rabi', but maybe against his position, you understand? That even though something like that existed, um, uh, he never wanted to foster a fitna. He would say, like, okay, beware, be careful, stay away from them. But there was never everyone always had the openness, the masjid had the openness for anyone and everyone to come and to be Muslim and worship together. Just not anyone and everyone could talk, And so, yeah, we never had that. I mean, we knew people were on it or off of it or what people said about it, but our goal was knowledge and growing. Here we are speaking English, relying on English books, man. What are we worried about this stuff for, man? Let's make ourselves better. Let's connect ourselves to the ulama, and that was our goal and still is.
No, so we can talk about some of that next time, because I think that I know that. So the times in my life, if we talk about, so like worship of Allah is an investment in yourself. And I mean that in every sense of the word. It's an investment in your dunya, it's an investment in your akhirah. And like any investment, there are times when you are really profitable. And I think the most profitable times in my life were Virginia. Obviously, that's the first time I go and study and really, and this is obviously after Islam, but going to school in Virginia, obviously going to Medina and getting the Arabic and really getting a decent grounding, inshallah. And then Kuwait for me is some of the most benefit, especially because I was older at this time. Now I'm probably mid-20s, had to be mid-20s at this time. 2013, born in 83, so I'm 20. No, 30. That's 30. 2013 would be 30, huh?
Yeah, you the old man.
I don't know. But I think that plays a large role in the ability to benefit in a different way, because when you're young, everything is exciting and new, and you have a desire to kind of be outlandish and new, and But by 30, I mean, it's more about getting it and doing it. And so I think for me that time, and anybody who knows me knows that I'm from the people of Shem in that regard. I think a person shouldn't study hadith till they're 30. But so I want to talk about that next time, and maybe highlight some of the, like we say, the harms of fitna and what it puts it into. And at the same point in time, some of the activities in the city and the good that was attempted, as well as the good that was accomplished as we set up to kind of get into the fitna years. Because if 15 was the beginning, then 15 to 20 maybe. I mean, it's not even that it's fitna years, because alhamdulillah, like we say, that consistency is one thing that's never stopped in the city. But like 15 to 20 would be the years of secrecy and people doing things and fitna and just some of the foolishness that happened outside of us in the community, to where we get to now in like the 2020 ones, twos, threes, when the project for the masjid is really coming to fruition, to where we are now with alhamdulillah, finally. And it's not done, but actually, having accomplished something in multiple levels, so just that progression. So I think that's what we can talk about next time, inshallah, if you got some time for it, inshallah.
No problem. I've got a couple comments here, I guess, unless you want to say something.
No, I'm just going over wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. I remember when the Sheikh Salam, we got to talk about that's next time, when Sheikh Salam came to America. And,
that's next time.
Next time.
And I said I was going to mention a point of benefit about Sheikh Salam when he came to our masjid, but I think it would be more appropriate to mention it along with some of this later stuff, even though it happened earlier on. It'd be more relatable.
No problem. And in those periods, I mean, those are the periods that are going to have some. It's going to require some, more detailed and more direct speaking on certain issues, because
for sure.
It's issues that they happen, and like I say, there is. I don't, and I can speak for you in this regard. If I feel that there is, first of all, everybody here is Salafi, so I mean, there's no questioning that. I don't believe, meaning everybody in this video right now is Salafi,
right?
But separations occur, arguments occur, disagreements occur, and so it's going to take really discussing in an open way some of the causes behind it. And maybe you're thinking similar to how I'm thinking about some of the causes behind it and some of the participators in it and some of the things that were done. And, at the same point in time, being able to look and see if we were mistaken in something, or, and putting it out there so that somebody, if they have advice that I might have overlooked or you might have overlooked, that there's no superiority complex or infallibility complex to where that a person thinks that everything they do is in perfection. But
the thing I want to mention is against me. So I mean, it's something I did that Sheikh Salam, Sheikh Salam has no problem correcting me at all.
I don't think one of the things I want to mention is something that is like towards the end of this conversation, and bearing in mind, like, all of this conversation, and even though it's not directly connected to our brothers who are trying to establish a masjid here, and bear in mind, like, I can't reiterate this enough, a masjid in any city is a good thing. And like you mentioning Sheikh Salam, it just makes me think, because like, and we'll talk about it, but I almost kind of want to jump the gun just because of the point, but perhaps I'll hold it. Like, Sheikh Salam is an amazing person when it comes to fairness and giving dawah and establishing Islam in a way that an unfair person doesn't recognize. And
for sure,
what I mean? It's one of those things that when certain things, certain things. And it's like, how many masajid, is Sheikh Salam having a hand in helping get established? And we'll put that, to that time frame when we talk about establishing masajid and things like that. But no, ahlan ya ahl Philadelphia. Wallahi, I consider myself from the children of Philadelphia. Like that had a big role in my life. So we love y'all, and y'all like our in-laws. You know what I mean? My family's from Philadelphia, so I definitely have a love for the people of Philadelphia. We also need some dawah here in Jersey City. I think it can be done. Wallahi, for sure it can be done. I mean, the main thing is attach yourself to the people of knowledge and work consistently. One thing that me and you used to say, Abu Muawiyah, a lot, like an example for us in St. Louis, I can say, if we take one locally and one, foreign, is Fareed, Abu Mujahid, and Abdul Razak, Ibn Abdul Muhsin. Because the two of them, I think the things that they did in Fareed and do in Abdul Razak is just work consistently. No. They're not involved. They're just constantly working, constantly focused on their activity.
You can see that, and those are two great examples. But I mean, you can see the consistency in a lot of things. Even in bad things, or even people who are consistent on dumb stuff accomplish something due to their consistency. You know what I mean? For real.
For sure.
If they're not bouncing around from one dumb thing to another, and they just stay on one dumb thing long enough, they're gonna grow, and they're gonna progress in that one dumb thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah. But I mentioned the two of them just because, like, you look at the community and the impact that they have. Like, I don't think there's anybody who would dispute that out of those who are here in America, like the homegrown, even though he's from the Bahamas, like Fareed is who he was, mashallah, rahimahullah. And I don't believe that to be anything except the result of the favor of Allah upon him because of that consistency with sincerity and humility. I mean, I only had the pleasure of knowing him for a short period, but
yeah.
And then the same thing with Abdul Razak. I mean, the same thing with Abdul Razak, like just constantly working. You can't find him in anything. His name has never been attached to anything fairly. There's the rumblings that some people might do in their frustrated corners, but I mean, and so that's, advice to that person. Can it get done? For sure. Just follow those examples. And those examples are historic. Mm-hmm. Sheikh Mukbil, Sheikh Muhammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, Sheikh Salam ibn Taymiyyah, right? They're throughout the time. It would be nice if y'all included brothers like Umar Lee. I don't know if you want to mention anything on that. For me, myself, I know Umar Lee. I knew him, should I say. He used to be part of the community in St. Louis before the masjid was established. I don't think we'll be conversations.
Yeah, first off, our goal is not about, even though we talk about Islam in St. Louis to some extent, because it leads up to us establishing the Salafi Dawah there, the whole goal is not necessarily in this series to discuss Islam as a whole in St. Louis, but rather the establishment of Salafiyah. And it's well known that Omar Quinn is an enemy to the Dawah to Salafiyah, and he's wrote, Omar Lee, yeah, I said Omar Quinn. I'm sorry, astaghfirullah. Omar Quinn is not an enemy. Omar Lee, and Omar Lee has written a paper against Salafiyah. So his position is not going to be. It's not going to add, as the person said in the last footnote, like our last comment from the last video, like he knows he's not on the same manhaj as us, but maybe bring benefit. He ain't gonna bring nothing but confusion, and Allah knows best. There are other people such as Labib and others that we can talk to that are around during that same era that can discuss matters with a more balanced position.
Do you know this
position?
Ismail Royer is?
Ismail Royer is the guy who was married to a Bosnian girl and went to war in Bosnia, and then he came back and got arrested with Alia Tamimi and the Virginia 12 or whatever.
Yeah, so yeah, definitely not. Yeah, you can keep waiting on that. It's not happening.
Anyway,
I remember going to Sheikh Salam's masjid in Kuwait, and I told him that I was from America, and he asked me, "Do I know Akil?"
Akil. Akil with a calf. Akil.
Can you please?
I'm trying to figure out who this Mu'adh ibn Jabal is, man. I can't figure out who he is.
He was telling you. I seen him before. I think he said he was in Kuwait with one of the.
I can't see his picture here, so I can't see who it is. I can't see his picture, but
can you please explain what a sururi? We obviously we don't have time to get into all of that, but Muhammad bin Surur was an individual who was with the Ikhwan al-Muslimin, and then he separated from them or had principles that were in line with the Ikhwan al-Muslimin and put a kind of Salafi attachment to it while still having some of those principles. And it's a whole history behind it. It's it's sufficient of you to know that they are a group of people that do exist and that you should be careful from. Unless you got anything you need to add to that.
No.
I got a chance to meet the Sheikh's oldest son, Sheikh Salam, I'm assuming. Hafidhahumullahu jami'ah.
No.
Good family. Walaikum salam. Who are they talking about? We're talking about the history of Tawheed and Salafiyya in St. Louis. Yes, Masjid was in Brooklyn. My mother actually lived, because that's the one.
I said Bronx.
Yeah, because my mother used to live right like 3 or 4 houses up the street from it. That's the one.
We went there.
Yeah, who was that? Mahmoud Abdurrauf Shaker, right?
He used to teach there. Yeah.
Abdurrauf.
Yeah, Abdurrauf Shaker. No.
Yeah,
we went there. We went to.
Yeah, I remember.
We went to your mom's house right down the street. Yeah.
Like we say, Ahlul Philadelphia, we love y'all for the sake of Allah. Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah. Dawood is from where? I'm assuming they're talking about the African American Dawood that you were referring to that used to live here.
Yeah, but he's from New Jersey though. They might be. I mean, I'm sure there is a Dawood from St. Louis. I mean, from DC, but he was from New Jersey. He was Abu Muslim's community. Maybe he was born in DC, but he grew up in Abu Muslim's community, and then he moved to St. Louis and married here, and then he ended up moving back after the door back to New Jersey.
He had 2 kids, right? Like 2 twins or something like that.
Not twins, but they were both close in age. Yeah.
And then you got, this is the brother Mu'adh again saying, I remember being in the Markaz al-Thaqafi in Kuwait in 2018.
That's what I'm saying. It seems like I should know him, but I just can't figure out. I can't. His picture's too small on my phone. I can't see him. So.
Yeah, there's no pictures here. Amir Abu Ismail, may Allah bless you, brothers. I mean, wa yakum. Oh, that's he's saying that's who he is, Amir Abu Ismail.
Mm-hmm.
I miss Kuwait. It opened me up. No, alhamdulillah. I feel like I don't have any help doing dawah here in Jersey. No, there's plenty of people in Jersey, and don't be apart from your brothers. I mean, work together. That's a lot. Tawfiq. Work together. There's plenty of people over there who are trying to accomplish some sunnah. It's me, Abdullah. That was with you in Kuwait. He's saying who he is, Abdullah. The same big Abdullah from last time, Ubaid. I mean, I
don't know. Man, like I said, I don't know. That guy's got so many nicknames on the internet. I don't even know. Anyway,
I'm following now. This is 2
hours.
Hours.
Now, next time, inshallah ta'ala, we'll discuss. Next time is going to get into the nitty gritty stuff. So, so far it's been pretty nice.
Benefit. Next time is going to be benefit. That's
but I mean, it's going to have to be more details, and next time it's going to be more related to the reason maybe why you started this, which is the brothers who are making the. I don't know.
I don't want to put that on them saying that they are doing something, because when I talked to some of them directly, they clarified that the statement that they said was.
No, I don't know what I just said. I said we're going to get into the nitty gritty, meaning details.
Yeah, for sure. But I don't want to make it seem like somebody is trying to attack them or refute them. I mean, I do have a problem with the way it was said. Yeah.
I mean, I got a problem with the way it was said, and I got a problem with the separation. You know what I mean? Even if it makes our tree stronger, that don't mean I gotta like it.
نسأل الله التوفيق والثبات والعز
آمين.
والاعتصام. اللهم أرنا الحق حقا وارزقنا اتباعه، وأرنا الباطل باطلا وارزقنا اجتنابه. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.